In this movie, we're going to look at an interesting but somewhat troubled piece of CSS that people have been using. It's called the important keyword. The important keyword allows us to bump up the importance of a given style so that we can, in fact, make it more important than another one without necessarily changing source order in the cascade. Now, the reason this is such a controversial and problematic issue is because, first of all, the important declaration was originally created to help user style sheets and author style sheets find a balance. The problem is that the CSS1 specification and the CSS2 specification treat this particular piece of CSS differently. And as a result, we get different results in different browsers. And different browsers have different ways of dealing with this. So it's a very problematic area, but it has to be discussed because you need to know about it when you see it, and you need to know how to use it to your advantage. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have my 04_03 HTML file open. As you can see here, a page with some paragraphs on it and a style element ready to add some style via snippets. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on over a snippet that has a couple of rules in it. And you can see here that, let me give you some breathing space. And as you can see here, we've got a conflict. I've got a paragraph with a rule here that says the background color should be it's a light pink, and then with a gray text foreground. And here says the text foreground should be darker pink color. So I'm going to save this file and I'm going to preview it in Firefox. And as we can see, we've got the lighter pink background coming from the first rule that we saw and the latter rule, which changes the color to the darker pink or purple in this case. So I think that if we flip back, you'll see very quickly, if you've watched the last movie, that we know why this particular conflict is being resolved. This color is being applied because, in fact, as we mentioned, it is closest to the content, and therefore it wins. Now, if you want to make this particular color take precedence over this color without changing the order of the source, you can do so by simply adding the important keyword or declaration within that particular style property. Give this a save, and let's go ahead now and hop on over to Firefox, reload it, and as you can see now, without changing the source order, the gray color for the text is what appears because we've made it more important. You're thinking, why, Molly, have you said that this is so problematic? Well, the reason is it has to do with the fact that important, again, was created for a balance of power between author and user style sheets, and that there's a misinterpretation or a changed interpretation because the CSS specifications switched the meaning of this between those two specs. As a result, we have inconsistent implementation of this. When an author makes something important, that could override a user style sheet, unless that user style also has an important rule. And what happens there is that different browsers are going to calculate that differently, and we end up making what was originally something for accessibility a real problem for those people trying to apply user style sheets, which we discussed in Chapter 3, to your page so that they can see it for their own special needs. So the way we advise people to use this is only in diagnostics. So if you're having trouble applying a given style, make it important and see if it works. If it works, there's a conflict going on somewhere. So you can use this as a way of diagnosing where a conflict might exist and then using the techniques I've been showing you to resolve that conflict. But what I don't want you to do is leave this in your documents. Take it out, okay? So while we could have used that to determine whether this style would apply because of the conflict, now we know that we have to actually put that style later in the source order. If we go back and reload, now we see that our color is in fact gray without having to have the important rule there. So we want to make sure that we allow users to always have the opportunity to make their rules important and trust that they need to do that in order to override our beautiful designs so they can see or experience that site and the content of that site in such a way that meets their special needs.